Josh here from DIYmusicmovement.com, and this is the 15-minute band builder, module 9.1.2. So we're halfway through our social media module now. In the last module, we took a look at YouTube. That's a pretty powerful one. And just in case you did want to check that out, you can go to www.youtube.com/user/JoshDIYmusic or at JoshDIYmusic on Twitter. And there'll be a link to that somewhere floating around on there. So basically we're going to venture a little bit further into the other social media types in this module. I just wanted to focus on YouTube as the main crux of this module because it is the world's biggest music search engine and probably is the most powerful make or breaker out of all of the social media engines at the moment for musicians in particular. So I just wanted to get that covered in detail. So as we finished up in the last module, I said that we were going to talk about Twitter, so we'll talk about Twitter now. I know a lot of people say just about Twitter in general, particularly in Australia, as it's not quite as popular as what it is in the US and Canada, is why Twitter, and maybe more so in our particular case, as we're all musicians hoping to build our brand and build our bands, is why would I use Twitter for my band? So you can see there in red, besides 100 million active users or more now, it's quite a bit more. They've actually released more recent stats, but you can always Google that to find out the most recent stats on active users. Twitter's growing so quickly that actually changes on a week-by-week basis a lot at the moment. These are just some of the reasons why you should use Twitter as a social media option. It's super easy to sign up to. It's easy to get started in interacting with followers, so fans on there. It's very easy to share content. You can put any link in there and it does the link shortening for you and all those types of things that are very clever, and uploading photos. Twitter has a powerful search function, so you can go into the search bar at the top of your Twitter and look up any band that you happen to be a fan of, any particular instrument brand or person that might have a genre or another band that you like or they might like you. If they happen to like a certain band, for example, if we carry on from the last module in one of my bands, A Candela Lie, if someone was to look for a perfect circle, we might pop up there because we've talked about them before on our Twitter. Or if we wanted to be really aggressive about our searching, we could actually go out and find people that have tweeted about a perfect circle themselves and add them and follow them and see what they're up to. Or look for other bands that say they sound like a perfect circle as well, so we know we have a commonality on Twitter with at least several other bands. Twitter's also a great place to track your genre, to see what's happening in your genre as a whole. Certain genres are more popular in certain parts of the world on Twitter. There's also a lot of etiquette on Twitter that you need to keep in mind. People don't like too much spam on there. They don't like anything that looks like an ad or looks like a sales pitch, so that's just something to keep in mind. But Twitter in Australia, not so big. It's getting bigger and bigger and bigger as the media catches on, and Twitter is just a more powerful media engine now. And in the US and Canada, it's probably equally as powerful as far as influence as a company like Facebook, even though it's obviously a much smaller company in general terms. The amount of influence that Twitter has on the artistic world is quite powerful in certain countries. So you don't want to rule yourself out of the world game because it is a worldwide industry, the music industry, so you need to be on Twitter. Just a caveat, if you were to go and look up A Candela Lie, one of my bands, we're not particularly active on there. I just see the value of it because my DIY Music Movement page has gone quite well on Twitter. It's probably my most interacted with social network. I think the reason for A Candela Lie not being super followed or super engaged with on Twitter maybe just because of the fact that progressive rock bands, particularly the heavier ones, appeal to maybe a certain age group that's not super Twitter oriented in Australia, but it is going very well on Facebook. So you always have to check your ROI. You don't want to spend hours and hours and hours on any social network if you're not getting some engagement back out of it. Obviously, if you just want to use the system, if you love Twitter just for your own personal use, then just start a personal account and just mill around on there in your own time. But when it comes to band time, you really have to be taking notice of whether you're getting anything back. I am planning on scaling up our Twitter because recently I've discovered a few things with DIY Music Movement that get a lot more interaction, different ways of wording things and giving people more space in your tweets to actually retweet you and have something to say. That's something just to keep in mind. You don't want to be maxing out your character limit on Twitter. And the reason that I would emphasize using Twitter regardless, even if it's to personally plug your band or as your band yourself, is to you get used to writing concise and short, punchy posts without going on and on and on, without being verbose. You don't want your language to alienate your fans. Twitter's very good for practicing writing, if nothing else. It'll make you a better writer for your blog. It'll make you a better writer for your bios. It'll make you better at pitching your music to people in a shorter amount of time, whether that's online or in person or in a forum or over the phone. Twitter's just a great training tool to learn how to write, if nothing else, as well as being able to track the music genre that you happen to be in or your favorite bands or fans of those bands. Is also a great place to track the industry itself. A large concentration of the most followed people on Twitter are very heavily centered around creative arts, whether that's music or authorship or publishing, through to record labels, through to entrepreneurs, so tech entrepreneurs and famous business speakers and authors, and also a lot of athletes and celebrities. So it's probably the place where you're most likely to track the industry directly, because Twitter's very, very fickle, and people just really, there's a lot of backlash on there if people find out that it's not actually the person that's tweeting that says that they are. Whereas on Facebook, most fan pages of celebrities, famous authors, famous athletes, they're probably not actually being run all of the time by the person. Whereas on Twitter, it's much more of a faithful connection there between the fans and the followers and the person they're following, that it is actually them that's communicating the majority of the time. And if it's not, they usually will state otherwise. So it's a good way to keep an eye on what's happening in the industry and also map out possibly movements in the industry into the future. Twitter has some great third-party posting apps. Twitter doesn't penalize you, as far as I know, for posting through a third-party app, such as Buffer app. If you wanted to load in 10 track suggestions of different YouTube videos of bands that you love, that you think your fans might like, you can do that in advance on something like Buffer app or on TweetDeck. You can control the Twitter experience and how it looks to you and how much actual information is fed to you out of all of your friends and followers on there through something like TweetDeck, which now is Twitter-owned. It's an app that can either run online or on your desktop to control the Twitter experience. The thing that Twitter will do that Facebook won't is that Facebook actually have stated that if you were to use any third-party posting app, you may actually negatively affect your Edge rank. We will be covering Facebook as an entire module soon, so don't think that I'm leaving out the 800-pound gorilla in the social media world. I just want to cover everything else first. Yeah, as I said, Twitter actually don't penalize you for using any of the extra tools that could make automating things such as links and cool photos and videos that you find. If you find them all at 12 o'clock at night, you don't want to have to go back the next day and look through all those great videos. You can just load them into something like Buffer app or TweetDeck and have that post for you at good times during the day. So Twitter's very clever. And as I said, it makes you a better writer. There's a great chance of networking with the real people in the industry and making some great connections on there. Just a few quick tips for using Twitter. It's always good to retweet things that you like, but make sure you actually do check them out and read them and make sure that they actually are appropriate for your audience and that it is actually the person that you're hopefully retweeting to your fans. If it's a fake account and they go to click on a link and it goes to some spammy site or a porn site or something, you may really negatively affect your power on Twitter to communicate valuable information to your fans. And also, obviously the greatest thing about Twitter really is that it's very instant. You can almost use it like a messaging service or a text messaging service if you really wanted to go that far. And that can all just run through the great apps that Twitter make for iOS and for Android. So there's a quick rundown on Twitter. Before we finish up, we'll just move on and I'll just show you where we're going to head in the next module. That'll be 9.1.3. That's the social web, and that's video tools. So that'll be a continuation from module 9.1.1, which is on YouTube. And these are just some of the other options we'll talk about in that module, which is Vimeo, Ustream, Amazon EasyS3, Hulu, and Dropbox. Rightio, I'll see you in the next module. Cheers, this is Josh from DIYmusicmovement.com, at JoshDIY on Twitter, if you want to follow me and read my tweets there. Okay, see you later.